Morning, everybody. All right, good. Yesterday I started my presentation kind of in the middle, so I really didn't introduce myself. My name is Correll. I'm Director of Product Management for Aerohive. I've been focused on Wi-Fi for about 15 years. I've been focused in networking for about 30 years. I go back to the Cabletron days. Who knows Cabletron? It's kind of funny. Less hands go up every time I say that, which is kind of scary. And, yeah, I know, that's the whole thing. And my RF goes back even to the 70s, and I hate to say that. But been here a long, long time. So today I'd like to make this as interactive as possible. I don't want to sit here for the next hour and stare at you and you guys stare at me. So if you have any questions, ask them, let me know. If you disagree with anything I say, let me know and I'll tell you why you're wrong. So it's really important that we kind of have a lot of fun here today. So we are going to talk about 11AX, and Wi-Fi is 21 years old this year. Back in May, it was the official. And they finally got it right with 11AX. And that's really kind of what we're going to talk about today, because there is some really neat stuff happening with 11AX. Does anybody know what IMT 2020 is? Okay, one hand. That was actually kind of, the ITU started this in 2012, and it was like international mobile telephony in 2020, what the world would look like. And this is where 5G came from. And within that, they defined all these things like, we need to have better network efficiency, and we need to have better spectrum efficiency, and we need to have better peak data rates, and we need to deal with density better, and we have less latency, and we need to have 20 gig worth of throughput. The following year, in 2013, the 11AX work group started working. And if you kind of notice, there's a lot, they followed along exactly the same lines as far as that technology. And even if I got, two 8x8 radios inside a single AP, in somebody's world, I can get 20 gig out of that. Don't know in reality, but it actually followed the 5G. So if you look at 5G and the IMT 2020, that's kind of where 11AX came out of, and it grew out of it. So it's kind of an exciting time for me. Obviously, I'm heavily involved, and there's a lot of people very concerned about when should I go to 11AX? When should I embrace this technology? Because there's, it's brand new type stuff, and it's bleeding edge technology, and I don't know if it's going to be ready for a couple of years, but there's a lot of shiny objects in 11AX, and you're hearing, who knows about 11AX? Who's my experts? Good, I can pick. A lot of hands go down when you say the expert part. But what are some of the shiny objects? What are the things people talk most about when they talk about 11AX? OFDMA, and it's kind of like I planned this, So I got this article, and it's out of, what does it actually came out of? RF Design. Understanding OFDMA. It was developed for fixed access to mobile. Subcarriers are grouped into larger units referred to subcarriers. Each user can get different amounts of bandwidth depending on need. Oh, wait a minute. This is from April 2007. OFDMA is not new. We think it's new because we're in Wi-Fi, but it came out of WiMAX, 802.16, G3, G4, LTE. It's been around for a long time. A lot of your phones have it in it now. On the LTE side of the house, not on the Wi-Fi side of the house. Okay, so that's not new. What else is shiny? OBSS coloring? Yeah, that's really, really cool. Be able to talk while other people are talking, and no, it's not brand new technology. That's 11AH, if you kind of look through, that's where that kind of found out. So what else? Anything? Target wait, that's 11AH too. Anything else? Multi-user upload. Well, they tried that in 11AC Wave 2. It didn't work too good, so they kind of pushed it back another thing. Anything else? QAM 24, 1024, that's really, really cool. That means I'm going to jam a lot more information down the wire. But I'm going to need 35 dB of SNR to do that. But okay, I can use smaller resource units, smaller frames, and I get a higher but it only works with 20 megahertz channels, so it really doesn't do that much. Anybody else? What do you mean duplex? Yeah, he was kind of say that, uplink, downlink. So MIMO came out of 11N, downlink came out of 11AC. Anything else? Longer guard intervals. It's kind of like I'm paid him to do that. So that's kind of a neat thing to do. And it's also got, I can deal with Doppler shift, and damn it, that was an 11P. There's got to be something new. Anything else? Multi-BSS in the beacon. Instead of having to have a separate beacon for every BSS. Wouldn't that be cool? What? That was an 11V? Yeah, it wasn't new. There is not a heck of a lot of new stuff in 11AX. It's actually incorporating a bunch of other stuff in it. And it's important to understand, I'm not saying there's not new stuff and you jump out there and do it right now, but be aware a lot of this stuff has existed in other places that have actually never been implemented before. So a lot of it's not brand new type tech, it's just pulling it all together, and that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about a little AX, but we're also going to talk about OFDMA, and everybody by the end of today is going to be able to say orthogonal frequency division, multiple access. You're going to sound really, really important. So that being said, move along. First thing people says, well, when's it going to be ready? How many 11AX clients are available today? Anybody want to guess? Pick a number between 0 and 0. There's engineering clients, there's beta clients and all that stuff, but there are no generally available clients out there right now. But where's the timeline? Right now, within the IEEE, we're at draft 3. Most of you guys know that draft 2, draft 3 is when the chipset manufacturers start doing it, kind of settle down on the technology, start to figure out what's going on. Has anybody ever sat in an ITU meeting? Why is it going to take another 8 months before the standard's ready? I'll tell you why. Because this is what people sit there and try to write. AP shall transmit at AMPDU as a non-APT station that includes an ACK and a block ACK frame together with a trigger frame or a frame carrying a TRS control subfield across the AP. Who writes this stuff? But this is why it's going to take, and by the way, if you're rather interested in sleeping, the IEEE spec is about 700 pages long. This is about 300 pages, and it's just the MAC part. So once again, if you're very interested in reading this stuff, let me know. You are. Good.
No, have Devin Aiken read it to you, because it'll be so fast.
He is beyond the scope of today's presentation. So if you guys really want to know what's going on, and I highly recommend this white paper from Rhodes and Swartz. It's written at a really, really good level, and you can take a look at here, you can search for it. It's just called 802.1x Technology Introduction White Paper. It's an excellent document. I highly recommend you use it. But this is kind of where we are. And do you guys know that the IEEE has already moved on to the next, the extremely high throughput? Anyone want to talk about 320 megahertz wide channels? Anybody want to talk to 16 by 16 designs? I'll be dead before that happens, so I'm not going to worry about it right now. The other thing what's happening in the Wi-Fi Alliance, obviously the Wi-Fi Alliance for the certification, and we all love and know Wi-Fi 6. Talk about that a little bit more tomorrow. What they're doing is they're going through interoperability plug tests. As a matter of fact, this week they're in plug test 5. Kind of moving along. They're targeting August of next year to actually have the certification, but anybody involved with 11N AC know this stuff actually comes out before that. Understand that 11AX is still the technology. The Wi-Fi 6 is the certification program. So it's kind of like Hotspot 2 and Passport. You know, they just kind of support each other. So, and you know, the whole idea of the Wi-Fi 6 is so it's not for us. It's for other people that look at your phone. You look at your phone and you might see G3 or Edge or LTE. We all know we want LTE and stuff. But right now, if you look at your phone or whatever, it just says Wi-Fi. So the idea is, you know, if you go to a hotel and they got 11G only, it's going to say Wi-Fi 3, and you can go and complain to the manager. Even if it works, you can complain to the manager, it's old. So that's kind of what's happening with there. And then products, kind of slowly coming along, and maybe we'll talk about that at the end, or maybe not. Okay, this is a transformative year for Wi-Fi. You know, one of the problems, and it's our fault, by our fault I mean vendors, is that there's always a new technology, there's always a wonderful thing. It's like, this is new, you need to buy this. But 2018 is actually really different because there's a lot of things happening here. Obviously, you got 802.11ax coming out. You got WPA3, which is a prerequisite for 11ax. So all 11ax certified products will have to be WPA3 certified. Then you got the whole IoT world. So there's a lot of things happening within Wi-Fi. I understand with IoT, you got Zigbee and Z-Wave and Thread and a bunch of other CRBS and other technologies, but we're seeing more shift back to Wi-Fi. Not because it might be the best technology for IoT, but it exists there already. Understand how to do it, understand to deploy it, understand the management. So you got a lot of stuff happening there. But as I said before, this is the problem we caused as vendors, is that about every 3 or 4 years, I come to you and say, hey, I got this brand new technology. It's called 11A. It's going to be faster than can believe and solve all your Wi-Fi problems. And you buy it. Well, you might, but other people won't. 4 years later, hey, I got 11N. It's faster than light. You know, it's a wonderful thing. 11N 150, then 11N 300, then 11N 4, and I promised 600 11N. Really never happened. But just about the time you paid for that, I said, I got this AC stuff. Wave 1, even faster than that. I mean, gigabits, and 11AC Wave 2. Can I grab your phone for a minute? Gonna give this thing 7.6 gigabit worth of throughput. That's exactly what my phone needs. But we do this every 3 or 4 years. And now 11AX is coming along and saying, yeah, I don't really care. 11AX is different. Yeah, I heard that before. But 11AX is all about high efficiency. If you looked at the 11N spec and read through it, it's actually within the IEEE, it says it's high throughput. 11AC actually said very high throughput. 11AX says high efficiency. And the next one says extremely high throughput. So, but it's all about efficiency. It's about doing things smarter. Yeah, it's going to be a little bit faster. You have advantages. If you're talking to somebody and they go, yeah, 11AX is really, really faster than the others, kind of smile real nice and walk away because they don't understand the value of 11AX. 11AX is about being more efficient. Okay, these are for the nerds. If you want to look at what's different, or the geeks, there's a double E in geek, so you always want to do that. This is all kind of the neat stuff's in there, and you compare them. Once again, people keep coming back to, 10 gigabits. Yeah, and if I got a 160 megahertz channel, who uses 160 megahertz channels? No. If you got an 8x8 design, no. Yeah, I can get up to those 10 gigabit speeds, actually 9.6. We just kind of round it up a little bit. But that's not what it's about. What Wi-Fi is about today is this. This is a typical architecture. I've got all these people in the room, and if I need to talk to you, the way it works is this. Can you actually see that? Good, because I can't see it, but if you can see it, that's good. I talk to you, you get an acknowledgement. I talk to you, I get an acknowledgement. Talk to you, I get an acknowledgement. And it works really, really cool, and it gave me 54 mega throughput. I said, that's not good enough. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do 11N. And I do the same thing, but I just do it a little bit quicker. It's a better design. You got to spend more money for it. It's a good thing. Trust me, I'm in marketing. Then, 11AC comes along, and it's like, I'm going even faster. The problem is it's really, really inefficient. Big packets, small packets. We were talking about voice yesterday. Heck, the data portion is smaller than the preamble and the trailer parts of it. So it's not a good design. So we keep throwing speed at it, and this is what happens. We're doing a road show in the States of 11AX, and every city I go to, they identify this as a different road. And if you live in a major city, you know this road. It could be the 101 in California, which it actually is. But every place has this problem. 7 o'clock in the morning, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the side of this road, I got a speed limit sign. It says 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers. And these cars are going 10. And if I made that speed limit 200 miles an hour, they'll still be going 10. They're just not going any faster because that won't do it, because of collisions, because of slow people, because of whatever. It's just not efficient. And maybe autonomous cars and stuff will fix that in the future. Probably not. But the whole idea is just by allowing people to go faster doesn't necessarily let you go faster. So what we want is something like this. We want something that can deal with different type of traffic, different type of devices, different type of use cases, and be extremely efficient. I don't even know where I got this picture, but it's pretty cool. The bus drives over the cars. And what that's going to give me is this. This is going to be 11AX. This is going to be OFDMA. This is the efficiency side. What? Exactly. So this is efficiency. The whole idea now is, okay, I counted up this room. I got 74 people in this room. Actually, I'm lying, but just go with me on this. With 11AX, in theory only, I could talk to all of you simultaneously. So if you all took your phones out and all making a phone call, little amounts of traffic, but continuous stuff, in theory, I could talk to all of you simultaneously. You think that's more efficient than talking to you one at a time? You think Voicera would be much happier if I can dedicate a dedicated resource unit just to them? Yep. Absolutely. So you guys are going to be the first ones to push people to buy this stuff. So, okay. So this is a poster we have, and if Devin or anybody read all pages of that document, you'd find out that buried somewhere in the 11AX spec is about 72 new features, or theoretically new features, that are going to improve your life. Well, there's about 7 of them that are kind of shiny objects. These are what most people talk about. OFDMA, uplink multi-user MIMO, I got some new preambles, 1024 QAM, going to save all our problems, TWT, OBSS, and all that stuff. None of this stuff is brand new. It really is. It's stuff that's just evolved over time, and they put it all back together. But this is what most people want to talk about. We're going to talk a little bit about this today, but the biggest thing I'm going to talk about is OFDMA, because I think that is going to be a game changer. I grew up through the Cabletron days and the ThickNet. We went to the switching environment. I'm not saying this is Wi-Fi switching, though we could have that argument. What I'm saying is in 1990, we went from a repeated environment to a switched environment for wire with the Calpana switch, the EPS 700, if any of you guys remember that stuff. Anybody remember that? Anybody know what kind of ports it had on it? AUI, and if you're under 50, you don't know what that is. So that was thick net cable attachments. But the whole idea is now I'm going to be allowed multi-user communication, and we can talk more about that at the end. You guys can let me know if you think this is switching. Troy said something. Troy come up in yet? He said something yesterday at the very end of his presentation. He said that full duplex is required for switching. Great kid, colleague of mine, 100% wrong. Switching is required for full duplex, so he's kind of got that backwards as far as that's concerned. So let's talk about stuff. If you guys remember my last presentation here, not here, but wherever it was, Lisbon and wherever. 2.4, I love it. 2.4 is back. You know, 11AC skipped 2.4. It hasn't been upgraded in 10 years, but 11AX was smart enough to embrace it. Because 2.4 is actually growing, as I mentioned before. IoT loves 2.4. If I'm a chief technology officer or whatever, and I'm designing an IoT widget on the wall, I want it cheap. That's 2.4 chipset. I want it to propagate as far as possible. 2.4 chipset. I want to work anywhere in the world. 2.4 chipset. So like it or not, it's back. Is it harder to deploy, design a network with 2.4? Yeah, that's why you guys get the big bucks. You know, you guys got the hardest job in the world. You got to build a network and you only get to build half of it. You just have to address the stuff that's coming on the other side. So operates in both bands. Let's see, I want to try to get 10 gig on 2.4. That's going to be ugly, but theoretically you can do it. The other thing is I got new preambles. Does anybody really care? Some people care about it. You know, I've got two different types. I got two single user types and I got two multi-user types. Got the old high efficiency. HE stands for high efficiency, if you didn't know that. Single user, SU, that's kind of tough thing. You know, I still got the legacy training fields, the short training fields, the long training fields, the signaling training fields. So it's still backwards compatible. God forbid I can build a brand new 11AX network and have B clients on it. But, you know, if you want to do that, if you got to support that, it is what it is. What's kind of neat with the legacy signaling frames, they actually repeat the signaling frame just for robustness. You're going to see that a lot. They actually duplicate frames and duplicate information, even duplicate entire traffic streams just to make it more efficient. High efficiency multi-user, this is kind of cool. Once again, the same thing. The signaling A field, that gives me all the information about OBSS, spatial streams, data rates and how I set the whole thing up. Signaling B, which we're going to talk more about, is about OFDMA and what's called resource units. How I take that 20 megahertz or 40 megahertz or 8 megahertz channel and split it up and have individual conversations with people. Then I got a high efficiency extended single user for you, just for you. The whole idea is if I got a device further away, only needs a little bit of traffic or whatever, I can actually boost that signal up 3 or 9 dB and actually duplicate some fields so I can guarantee I get a good signal further away. And then I got the high efficiency trigger frame. You guys are going to learn a lot about triggers. Who knows about triggers? One person. How many triggers are there today? There's 7 different types of triggers. There's a basic trigger. Well, we'll talk about triggers but there's a lot of different types of triggers that cause things to happen. Because the AP is in charge of downlink and uplink, I got to tell people what to do. So once again, this is all here. All backwards compatible, all functionality. Somebody mentioned this before, longer symbol time. This is going to actually help to be more robust, especially outdoors. What's the problem with doing Wi-Fi outdoors? You see, these presentations like this are tough, but if I make you guys do all the stuff, it's much easier. So what's the thing about doing Wi-Fi outdoors? Must be early. As a signal propagates with multipath, those things show up at different times. So actually you get this delay spread that gets longer. If I make the symbol times longer, and if I make the guard interval, right now with 11AC I got about a 3.2 packet, and I got a 0.8 guard interval, so I got about a 4 microsecond. With this, I quadruple that size, and I have a guard interval that can be up to 3.2. So once again, a lot more space, and as long as the guard interval is wider than the delay spread, it's going to be much more reliable. Does that make it less inefficient? Yeah, but I actually get the signal there and back, and I can actually duplicate this functionality. So a lot of those fields actually get duplicated for reliability, and the longer symbol time and the outdoor frames. Sometimes I'll use 2 resource units, and I'll use something called DCM, dual carrier modulation, and I'll send the exact same signal to that one device on 2 separate what's called resource units. We'll talk about that for. Once again, it's all about reliability. All about efficiency. Get it through once. Yes.
Called high efficiency, and yet many of these features are less efficient, but back about reliability.
When they put it all back together, it becomes more efficient. I mean, you don't have to use the outdoor type stuff, but the outdoor type stuff is more about reliability and robustness than necessarily about efficiency. You could make the argument that if I don't use this and I have to do a lot of retransmits, it's worse. But somebody else can make those arguments. 1024, as I said, it's a great thing. New generation of chipset, it's a little bit better. The gotcha there is, negative 35 dB. So as long as you're sitting on the AP, it's pretty cool. You get a lot of throughput. Once again, this is where you get the 25% improvement. This is where you jump from the 7.5 gig in 11AC Wave 2 all the way up to the 10. Once again, the marketing makes a lot about the 10 gig. It's not about that. It's about efficiency. This is another one of the features. TWT came out of 11AH. Wi-Fi for the last 10, 12, 13 years was trying to deal with power issues. They had wireless multimedia, they had DTIM, they had, alternate power save, whatever that functionality was. But they came up with, 11AH came with TWT, target wake-up time. And what's kind of funny is if you look in the IEEE spec, it doesn't talk about this as power saving. All this is scheduling, a better scheduling way to do it. But the idea between here, and I believe you mentioned it yesterday, if I can put a phone to sleep, or if I can put a device to sleep more often, 20 milliseconds, 40 milliseconds, you said your guys were sleeping half the time, even when I'm talking, right? 70%, is that you can save battery life. And that's what this is. Try to do it better. Set up a time, hey, go to sleep for a while, I'll call you when you've got something for you. Where this is even more important, though, is in IoT space. I'm getting these sensors now, these cheap sensors that I put on a wall of, maybe some hard gardening center where it records humidity. And every 24 hours, it sends me a couple 100K of data on the humidity over the last 24 hours. Now, if I can tell that device to go to sleep for the next 23 hours, 59 minutes, and 58 seconds, and then wake up and send me the data because I'm waiting for it, and then go back to sleep for another 24 hours, or another week, or whatever it's going to be. That's going to be far more efficient, and that's what target wake-up time is really all about. Reduce energy consumption. Make that little device on the wall the battery lasts 3, 4, 5, 10 years, whatever it happens to be. So it's kind of a neat feature for this. OBSS, really called Spatial Reuse, or Overlapping Basic Service Ed, or BSS coloring, pick the term you want, whatever it was. It's dying to be more efficiency. Do you hear that person talking outside? I can barely hear them, but you think I should wait until they're done? That's what this is all about. Wi-Fi is like a room full of courteous, or an area full of courteous people. Anybody can talk when they want, but if somebody else is talking to my channel, somebody else is talking to my frequency, I will defer. I'll wait. I'm a nice guy. Maybe I don't need to be as nice a guy. If you think about how this works, what it is all about is within my environment. If I deployed an AeroHive network somewhere, with all those AeroHive clients and all those AeroHive access points, within a certain bit, I'll set that bit, and let's just say I don't know why they use coloring. That kind of confuses everybody, but that's just a bit I'm set. And let's say that bit is orange. So if I see anybody else talking and that orange bit is set, I'll defer. I'll follow normal rules. But if I see somebody else talking and it's not one of my people, it's a kiosk down the block, it's another business that's upstairs, they're not somebody maybe I will be less courteous. That's really what this is all about if you think about it. So if you kind of look at it this way, if I hear somebody talking and they're in my same environment, maybe 96, which is pretty weak signal, I'll still defer. But if they're coming from outside my environment, maybe I'm not going to defer unless they're 83 or stronger than that. So the whole idea is, if I'm talking and they're talking and we see each other at negative 90 between us, chances are I'm not going to interfere with them, they're not going to interfere with me. So the whole idea is be a little bit smarter. Just because I can hear you at negative 92 doesn't mean I need to shut up. The efficiency side. This applies as far as CCA. It also applies as far as my nav timers. So if I hear somebody at a weaker signal outside my color bit, I hate the color bit type stuff, I don't necessarily reset my nav timer. But if they're within my environment, I will. Once again, it's all being smarter about it. This is exciting, right? won't be in the first release. There will be two 11, there will be an 11AX Wave 1, there will be an 11AX Wave 2. So in 11AX Wave 1, this bit's going to be in there, but they're not going to do any certification testing or anything like that from the Wi-Fi lines. So just be aware. Multi-user MIMO, who thinks this is the greatest thing in the world? People are afraid to put their hand up, so. In 11AC Wave 2, they came out with it. I think there's like 4 laptops out there that support that. I'm not aware of a production network that implemented. There's nothing wrong with the technology. One of the challenges with using different spatial streams to talk to clients is they have to be spatially separated. I can't talk to you 4 people in 1, 2, 3, 4 spatial stream. I need to talk to you and you and you because I have to have some separation, some distance between you because as I do the beam steering, I basically have positive and negative noise that I put on it to separate the communication. So with 11AC Wave 2, I allowed up to 4x4 downlink type capabilities. It really wasn't implemented very much. And be aware, 11AC Wave 2 actually tried to do the uplink, it just the technology wasn't ready. With 11AX, they will support up to an 8x8 architecture, uplink and downlink. So now I had a hard enough time trying to talk to 3 people at one time. Now I'm going to try to talk to 8 people at one time. Interesting? Cool? Not available in Wave 1. So don't worry about it right now. It does have some use cases. The best use case for multi-user MIMO is fewer devices, large bandwidth requirements. That actually is a better solution than OFDMA might be. So be there. And the other thing, aggregate MPDU, multi-TID, the ability to put traffic with different QoS within one frame. They're adding this functionality too. It's kind of neat. You know, they have to do it. If I'm doing multi-user type communication, I have to be able to join all this stuff together. So that's kind of the neat things happening. One other thing. Yeah. And that was talked about before, just never got into anybody's type stuff. The other thing they're doing is really cool is 20 megahertz clients. Do you guys realize how many access points and clients, Wi-Fi clients that are out there that have never been through Wi-Fi line certification? There's a lot. A lot of people don't realize that. I worked for a company for a while, and I didn't even realize that people didn't do it until I worked for that company and found out they didn't do it. Because sometimes the certification is too complex for the product I'm making. I'm making a little tiny commercial grade product and I don't want to run through the certification. So what 11AX did is said, we're going to have a lot of IoT devices, we're going to have a lot of consumer grade devices. We want them to come through the certification. So what they did is they classified something as 20 megahertz only. With 11AX, with a regular client, in 2.4 you have to support 20 megahertz. In 5 gig you have to support 80 megahertz, or 80 megahertz wide client. What they said is, let's make a 20 megahertz wide client, kind of for the IoT world. All you have to do is support 20 megahertz. All you have to do is support a single spatial stream. All you have to do is support PSK or QPSK, which is kind of older technology. Once again, it's designed for low-speed type IoT type devices. But it's kind of a nice idea. That way, it's going to encourage people with lower-end devices, and I don't mean that negatively, to actually get them certified. It does have to support all the other stuff. But that's an overview. Now the fun stuff. How are we doing for time? We're doing great for time. OFDMA. In order to understand OFDMA, you got to understand OFDM, orthogonal frequency division multiplexing. And this is really, all this is a digital modulation type technique. It's been used since since G. It kind of goes back 20 years or so. So it's available, it's kind of neat. And this is what it looks like. You know, most people, when I think about a 20 megahertz channel, I think, okay, I got this frequency sitting there. It isn't. It's a bunch of sub-frequencies called tones or sub-channels. Use anything you want. This technology has been around for 100 years. It's not brand new. It's just been using it different. And these tones or these sub-channels or whatever you want to call them are broken out like that. And if you're the typical architecture today, I got about 64 tones. And about 48 of them are for data, and the rest are for guard intervals, and you've got things called pilots, which are pretty cool. Anyone know what a pilot is? Stripes on a freeway, that's cool. Or the guy that sat up in the front when you flew here. But that's not what this does. What a pilot does is this transmits known data, known frequency, known symbol type stuff. Because at the receive end, based on how much the pilot is degraded, I can assume the data is degraded the same way and recover the information. So it's actually kind of a pretty smart way when I'm transmitting communication, especially in noisy environments, to figure out what it looks like. So data subcarriers carry the data, and the other ones do management and control type functionality. So the way it works is like this. And now you're starting to get some idea what OFDMA does. So I got all these subcarriers that carrying it, and 20 megahertz channel, and when I send data to you, you get the whole channel. And you're sending these big, terabit PowerPoint files or whatever you're sending. And then, then you get a little Voicera stuff. And you only got about this much data, but you get that whole channel. And you mix and match, and everybody gets it. But you get that entire collection of subchannels when you're communicating. Probably not the best way to do it. So we came up with OFDMA. Not me personally, but it's an access technology. And that's really what it does. It says, let's find a better way to do this. We got all those subchannels. So, I would take less bandwidth if I could have a consistent amount of bandwidth. Once again, I like picking on the Voicera guy because he led into this yesterday, that he doesn't need 20 megahertz or 80 megahertz or 160 megahertz. Give me 2 megahertz, but give it consistently, and I'll be thrilled to death. So what they did is first, they took those 64 subchannels, and they quadrupled the number. I'm going to have 256 subchannels now, but they're going to be 1/4 the size. So I still got the same amount of space, but I got a lot more subchannels, and I can break it out. So I got, and these subchannels, a lot of times you'll see them written as tones. So TONES or subchannel, same thing as far as anybody concerned. So I got all this stuff, when I get up into the 160 megahertz range, it just gets ridiculous at that point. Once again, with with 11AX, just like anything else, you get these numbers that, it was some graduate student in a lab that did this in a Faraday cage one time and it worked, and it never does again. Production networks, most people are still living in 20 and 40 megahertz type of environments. So this is kind of where we are. So what I'm doing is I'm taking these subchannels and I'm turning them into what we call resource elements. Or resource units. Resource elements is what LTE called them. But they're called resource units. And what I can do then is I can break them down as small as 26 tones, which is basically about 2 megahertz channel. So I can have 9 2 megahertz channels, or I can have 4 megahertz channels, or I can have 2 8 megahertz channels, or 1, this is kind of the way it works. And I can break it up this way. So as I said, if I turned off everything but one radio in this access point, if it would supported 11AX, and I had 74 people in this room, I could give every one of you a 2 megahertz channel. And if every one of you had a Voicera device, see, I'm giving you a lot of marketing to this, doing that stuff. That's probably enough. And I can talk to you all simultaneously. But that's not going to happen. What's going to happen is you need 2 megahertz, you might need 106, or you might need 8 megahertz, or you 4, and every transmit opportunity, up and down, I can change. I can reset that. Or what's more importantly, I can dedicate a certain amount of traffic or a certain amount of tones or a certain resource unit, whatever term you want to use, to a specific device the whole time. Think about that maybe in an environment where I've got 2 APs in here supporting the environment, but I got a mesh link between them. I can nail up that mesh link that's a dedicated 4 megahertz of traffic and still talk to everybody else simultaneously. I don't take the hit doing that. So it's really, really cool. On top of that, each one of these resource units, different data rate, different power level, different amount of bandwidth. So once again, I've got this device, you're sitting right here, you got a real high SNR, you want a real high data rate, I can tell you, lower your power level. You don't need that much power to reach me. I got another one 200 meters away, I'll say raise your power level. As long as the EIRP between all of them come back together, I'm fine. So you can be sending a much, much higher power level at a higher data rate with a lower SNR versus you on that same frequency. That's the efficiency part. Yes, sir?
That one, you're talking about power upstream, you can control the upstream power. Downstream, can you send one group of resource units at a different power level?
Absolutely. Because I know he's further away. So I'm going to boost it going to him and not to you. So each resource unit considered a separate media path. And there's a lot of issues as far as pre-correction and balancing out the power and the symbols and stuff. Yeah.
Send more on those specific
Correct.
So if you saw this on a spec and you would actually see, it wouldn't be a flat topping.
I need to give you money because about 5 slides from now, it's going to work out. But that's the key point to understand is these aren't equal. They're whatever you want. And this time you get everything. Next time I split it up between everybody. You get 2, you get 4, you get 6. Raise your power, lower your power. Once again, it's really, really cool. To that point, this is kind of what it looks like. This is how I figure out what's going on. You know, these numbers are basically off my center frequency. Obviously, my center frequency is what's a DC channel. That's my 0 frequency. This happens to be a 40 megahertz word channel. And the way I identify what space you get, I don't say RU3. I say you get spaces between -22 and -48. And you'll see that coming up on the next slide. So this would be a 20 megahertz channel. This would be 80 megahertz channel. Once again, a lot of traffic, and I can double that even more. To the question you just asked, this is what it looks like when a spectrum analyzer. It's real. Does anyone want to guess which chipset manufacturer sent me this? Yes, thank you. I had to say that if they sent me this. So, so you can kind of what this looks like. You know, this is a single tone, a single RU, 2 megahertz wide. This is 4 megahertz wide. The middle channels, if you remember, was kind of split. So it's like 2 13s. So in a way, you know, I'm actually bonding these two in the middle here to get that, bless you, to get that 20 megahertz, bless you again. Next time it'll be Gesundheit. But, so this is kind of actually what it looks like. These presentations will be made available. Feel free to take pictures all you want. But this is what it looks like, and I can do different power levels for different reasons. Once again, they're just doing a lot of testing here. The other cool thing about this, wait a minute. Go ahead if you want to.
Hey, wait.
Great picture.
Yeah.
Arrowhive has an AX AP out. Couldn't you have taken your own picture?
That's beyond the scope of today's presentation. We're not supposed to do marketing. Though I do have one slide at the end.
Okay.
This essentially is what you just said, but I wasn't going to do that. I was trying to be. This is also the way the RUs would be transmitted to people. I'm going to give you RU1. You get, -70, -21. That gives you your space. So I can set this out different ways. What's kind of interesting with 11AX, once again, to your point, it's about also being robust as far as being efficient. We identify, when I'm sending information out to a client, telling them what resource units they want, I'm identifying that both at the PHY layer in signal B and at the MAC layer in the user information. So there's 2 ways that they can get this to be very reliable. So once again, this is kind of what it would look like in the information field. How much you're going to get, RU allocation bits. There's different ways to look at the exact same information. And the trigger also is going to say, well, I'll show that when we get to that. So that being said, let's talk about how it actually works. I'm doing good. This is kind of how Wi-Fi works today. I contend to get the air. I send traffic to you. Got a CIF. You send me your acknowledgement. I start that whole process over again. What this is really all about is I'm the access point in charge, so I need to contend. It's still going to work the same contention process as ever because you're going to have mixed environments probably for the rest of my life at least. So I'm going to still, as an access point, I'm going to still contend for the air. What I'm then going to do is I'm going to send stuff to stations. I want to send stuff to stations 1, 2, and 3. I've got stuff in my buffer. So what I'm going to then do is I'm going to send out what's called a trigger saying you. I got data for you. Your data is going to be this much data. This is going to be my transmit opportunity, how much I'm going to send to you. This is the RU, the frequencies I'm going to send it to you on. This is the MCS rate I'm going to send it to you on. And this is the power level I'm going to send it to you on. And then I send it out. You guys give me a block ACK, and I start again. If you want to look at it, step through that whole process, what I just kind of went through, I put it in here for you guys to understand what it looks like. Once again, multi-unit request to send. It's just another form of trigger. I identify the clients, I tell you what the transmit opportunity is, clients give me a clear to send, I send the data, I get a block ACK. That's pretty good for the brainiacs, but let's see the rest of us. So this is kind of how it works. I got an AP, I got station information to send to those 4 clients. I'm going to send a trigger. I identify the 4 clients that I want to talk to. They have to agree to accept the data. So what's going to happen, they're going to send me essentially a CTS, a clear to send. Once I get that, I'm going to send the packets over. And I'm going to get block ACK back. So once again, if I'm talking to 4 people, it looks like it's more packets at this point, but this is one transmit opportunity. Once the access point gets it, I'm not contending for this CTS, this block ACK. It's all happening within one type environment. And by the way, Third slide from the end, there's something called a compressed mode that it even gets more efficient.
Can you go back that slide just to the, right there, the CTS that comes out.
Okay, I send a request to send. It's just called a trigger, but it's what a multi-user request to send.
So this makes it look like all of those are simultaneous.
Correct. They all have to send a CTS. They all have to say, yes, I'm ready for the data. But it's all in one frame.
But it's all different data.
Correct.
For each, so it's not. So
Correct.
It's like a multi.
No, they're all just saying, yeah, send it to me.
But during that time, do they have to contend for the airtime?
No, this is all within the AP's transmit opportunity. There's no SFIFs, there's no AIFSs, there's no DIFSs. It's just the AP has the air for this whole period of time.
Is that RTS a regular packet, or is it
It's a trigger packet.
is it just a file I have to download? Does it have map text?
It's got stuff in it just because it has to identify the different type devices in there.
But it's not 4 of them.
No, it's one, and it basically goes across the whole 20 megahertz channel. So even devices that aren't included in this 4 know that there's something going on, shut up, don't bother me. So. This is kind of what it looks like without moving back and forth. So I got data for 4 people. I send a trigger out. I contend first. It actually doesn't show the contention up there. I send that out. Actually, this shouldn't be in there because that's all within that same transmit opportunity. I'm going to yell at David for putting those in. But
Do you not show the SIFs within the transmit?
no, it's not SIFs. Okay, there is a SIF, but it's not a SIF like the other.
No, but it's still within.
Yeah, there's a time period within there. I guess it's legally it's a SIF. It's a gap.
Yeah, I think it is.
Yeah. So once again, this is what we just looked at, different types of groups of devices. And I said this is kind of what it looks like. Now let's look the other side. Now at uplink side. Before I can do an uplink, I need to know who needs to send data. So what I do within the 802.11x spec, there's something called a buffer status report, where devices let the access point who controls them know I have data to send. There's 2 ways the access point learns about this. One is explicit, one is implicit. There's another trigger type called the buffer status report poll, where every so often the AP will send out a trigger frame saying, who's got data to send? That's kind of an inefficient way, but I can learn what it is. And the AP builds a table of who has data that they need to send upstream. The other way is anytime a device sends me traffic of any type, in a QoS field or in a buffer status report field, they can append, I have information to send, what's the QoS of information, how much data do I have to send? So the whole idea is, once the network's up and operating, there shouldn't have to be too many buffer status report polls. I shouldn't have to use a lot of triggers to find out. I should continually get updated on what's happening in the network. But once I know what's on the network, then I can actually start making decisions. So what I'm going to do is the AP once again controls, I send an AP buffer status report if I don't have it. Once I figure out what the network looks like or who has information to send, I'm going to build a table. What's the priority of this traffic? And right now, as far as 11AX is concerned, it's all about 4 different classes of traffic. Obviously, vendor-specific implementations can do what they want. We all have some type of airtime fairness where we prioritize stuff, and there's nothing that stops you from doing that. But as far as the standard is concerned right now, it's just the 4 levels of QoS, or it's not called QoS, so it's access. Huh? Access categories, yeah, well, it's part of that. So what happens, I'm going to build a schedule. And what I'll do is decide, depending on whether I got a 20 megahertz, a 40 megahertz, and 80 megahertz, how many clients I can talk at one time, how much data. You got a bunch of data you need to send, so I can give you a big RU. You got a small bit of data, I can give you a little. And I can spread this out and prioritize it in some fashion. I can do it purely based on access categories, or I can prioritize it other ways. Once again, one of my priorities could be, I've got a mesh link to another AP, and I'm going to dedicate them 52 tones continuously. So once again, it's up there. At that point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send a multi-user request to send. I'm going to send a packet out to the 4 or 8 or 12 or 15 people I decide that get to talk on this next transmit opportunity and say, guys, you got the golden ticket. You can transmit on the next opportunity. These are the RUs you're going to use and how much space. This is the MCS rate I want you to use, and this is the power level I want you to use. What's going to happen, they're going to come back and say, cool, we're ready to go. I'm going to send another trigger out and say, go. After the other trigger, you have to reply within 400 nanoseconds to keep everything in sync coming up, and then I'm going to send you a block act that say, I got it. Now we'll look at it in a little bit more dynamic fashion.
Does the client's choice of MCS go upstream in the request?
No, the client, I tell the client doesn't tell me.
How does the AP know what the client, whether or not he's going to be successful using that choice of modulation?
Based on what kind of traffic he has, how much traffic he has to send, and what time, and just the communication I've had with him before, the AP is going to make a best guess of what that performance is going to be.
The MCS is chosen by the transmitter.
Typically, yes. But because you got all these different channels happening at the same time, the AP has to kind of balance this all the way out across the thing. So this is kind of what it looks like in a stagnant type environment. I send a trigger, they send the uplink, and I send a multi-station block ACK. Looking at it the other way now, got the AP, I'm going to send a trigger, buffer status report poll. Who needs to send data? These guys going to send a buffer status resource report. The acronyms are getting nuts here. At that point, I'm going to build my table. I'm going to send that trigger out and say, guys, U4, U8, U9, whatever, U1, these are the areas you're going to use. They say, cool, we're ready to send. I send another trigger. Once again, it seems like a lot of triggers. They send the data. By the way, if you notice, there was a gap in this one. You have to pad. Everybody has to use the same amount because it's got to be balanced because everybody's doing different things. But so if I don't have anything to send, I pad this. The goal of the AP is that if you don't have enough to send, I'm going to give you a skinnier resource unit. Or if you don't have enough to send, you can send more than one piece of data. You can kind of, multi it. Or in here, you can say how much more information I have in my buffer status report. So there's a lot of things you can use to fill up that area. But they all have to have the same amount of time. Yes?
So I'm assuming then you're limited to how many clients based on how your tone.
Exactly. So
you can use up to as many subcarriers as you have, and after that, it could be
correct.
It could be 4, it could be 2, it could be.
I've got 242 subtones that I'm going to split up some ways, but glad you can make it. The grouping is a minimum of 26 tones, which is 2 megahertz. It's 2.2. It's close enough, whatever. There is discussion, which is beyond the scope of this, is future generations taking that down even smaller to address the IoT type environment. We look at, who the heck needs 2 megahertz? We need gigahertz. But it's like, depending on how much data you're trying to send, it's more efficient that way. And then I'm going to send a multi-station block ACK type request. Yes?
When will the reports come back to say that they have data to transmit?
Excuse me?
When all the reports come back to
Yes.
say that they have data to transmit,
Yeah.
will they go at the same time?
Not now. They just saying, I got more data, and the AP kind of builds its table of who's got stuff to go.
So they are sent separately?
Correct. Hold that for about another 5 slides. Because there's some neat stuff going on here. So this is kind of what it looks like for that. You look at this, and the first thing you're going to say, God, that doesn't look efficient. But if you think about it, if I'm trying to talk to 4 people, I'm going to contend, send you information, you're going to acknowledge. I'm going to contend, send information, you're going to acknowledge. You're going to contend, and the same thing, the process over. So once again, kind of look in this a little bit more dynamic way for different groups. Now it gets even screwier. What about random access? What if I don't want to dedicate a resource unit to you? Within 11ax, it does have the option that the AP could set up some of these resource units, some of these subcarriers, as open, best guess. So let's say I'm doing 9. I'm 20 megahertz, and I'm broken it up into 2 megahertz. I'm going to assign 5 of those to 5 of you. The other 4 I'm going to identify as random access, which means the rest of you guys that have low priority data or whatever, you can just contend for it and use a regular contention process. The same EDCA that we have now. I'm gonna pick a number between 1 and 15, back off, give it a shot. If you guys collide, you don't get the acknowledgement, you have to do it again later. So there is a random access option here. Yes? 5 minutes. I can do that. I don't have a watch on. So once again, it's kind of cool. There's actually some discussion of this might allow a non-associated station to send data, because maybe the station's too far away that I can hear the AP, but my power level doesn't let them hear me. So I actually might be able to throw some data in there at a later time just to kind of wake him up a little bit. Once again, it's kind of beyond the scope. And then the other one is something called a cascade mode. This won't be in the first release or the other. But what I can do, I'm getting too excited. But what I can do now is that this would be the first generation up at the top. That's OFDM. This is OFDMA. This is cascaded OFDMA. Here to here is one transmit opportunity, which means within that so many millisecond gap, I'm transmitting information to you. Instead of you sending me an acknowledgement, you're sending me acknowledgement, but you're sending data too. So the whole idea is I'm jamming all this stuff through. So if I'm able with the same transmit opportunity to send data to you and you data to me, is that switching? That's beyond the scope of today. But this is the next generation. This is actually where we're going. But that's definitely, it might be wave 3 or 9 or 12 or whatever it's going to be. I have no idea. So the whole problem is the AP's in charge. AP's in charge downstream, AP's in charge upstream. You'll have a mixed environment. So once again, if I got 20% AX clients and 80%, the AP contends against you 80%. And once I get it, I can support you guys. So where we are today, draft 3, everything ready to go. Alliance moving along, everything's looking cool. You know, and I do sit with the IEEE. I am the interface to the IEEE. I am the interface to the Wi-Fi Alliance for Aerohive, so I get to sit in on these things and scream on them. And we do have products, but that's as marketing as I'm going to get for right now. We're been shipping for about 2 months. And by the way, the industry is really excited about that. Questions? 11AX is coming. Yes, sir.
Yeah, you said that you can vary the power by resource unit.
Yes.
How does that work with the regulatory environment exactly? In terms of
What do you mean with the regular? I have to lower the other. As long as my EIRP matches for that radio, I'm good to go. Over the 20 megahertz channel or the 40 mega or whatever I'm within. So
I could send 9 resource units with almost no power and one with 10 dB extra.
10 dB would a little bit much, but theoretically, yes, as long as the total amount, well, 10 dB would violate probably pretty much everybody. As long as the combined doesn't exceed the regulatory EIRP. I mean, I can drop some and raise others, but the total can't be over whatever the regional area is. Yes, sir.
How the hell are we going to monitor and test these new networks?
Not my problem. Okay, who's the testing guys in here?
I asked Rodi and Schwartz that in Barcelona at Mobile World Congress, and I thought they'd be ahead of the game. I thought they'd be one of the forefront.
I think the last 2 pages in that white paper say we're working on it, or something along those lines. So it depends. It really does. Or 42, which is actually Jackie Robinson's number, which I don't know what that's got to do with it.
I just think there's going to be a lag, and it's going to be a pain point for us all.
As long as you buy our products, I don't care. No, I didn't mean that. No, it is. I mean, we saw the same thing with 11AC Wave 2. How am I going to do different spatial streams and all that stuff? It's going to happen because let's just be honest. It's a marketing world. Somebody's going to come out with it first, and they're going to make money, and the other guys are going to come along. 11AX is going to happen. Period. End of conversation. Right now, it's a shiny object. 18 months from now, it's just going to be the need default. I mean, that's just the way it works. So, any other questions?
So how many clients have you seen out there? Any manufacturers giving you guys this test?
For people who got here on time, he already answered that.
Yes.
And we were doing.
Okay, let me answer this. How many commercially available 11AX clients are out there? Zero. I wanted a more enthusiastic answer, but you're going to see them by the end of the year. I mean, the same clients that are making the stuff for RAPs and others, the other side of the house is making the stuff for the clients. So it's not like we're waiting on a different vendor. If looking at Broadcom's making three chipsets. One for enterprise access points, one for consumer grade access points, one for clients. They're all moving along at the same time. They're all going through the same testing at the same time. They're all going through the Plugfest at the Wi-Fi Alliance and stuff. So that's all happening. So, all right, thanks a lot, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Great amount of information.